Hello, it's Monday, July 17th, 2017. You are listening to Inception Radio Network, voice of the fringe majority. This is Carol Carl with UFO Headline News. So, if you're speculating what you'll see in your sky tonight overhead at the end of the day, well, it ought to go something like this. EarthSky.org provides us with Deneb and Cygnus the Swan. Tonight's chart has you looking eastward at that famous summer triangle. Tonight, notice Deneb, that star, the northernmost star in the summer triangle. It's in the constellation Cygnus the Swan. If you're lucky enough to have dark country sky around you, you can see that Cygnus is flying along that starlit trail of the summer Milky Way. Deborah Bird inserts this interesting anecdote here. There's someone named Annie Lewis. She lives in Madrid, Spain, and she was out taking photographs shortly after nightfall. She was trying to catch the summer triangle. Well, yep, she did. And she says the only stars visible to her unaided eye as she took the photo were those three in the triangle. But her camera knew better. You'll have to see that shot to fully understand it. And you can see that shot later today at ufoheadlinenews.com. If it's darker out, you might recognize the summer triangle by noticing there's a cross within the triangle. The constellation Cygnus is that cross. In fact, the constellation Cygnus is sometimes called the Northern Cross. Okay, there's lots of names here. Summer Triangle, Cygnus, Northern Cross. Easy to remember, the constellation Cygnus the Swan contains that Northern Cross. The cross is more or less just another way to see the swan. The Northern Cross, well, that's one of those things called an asterism, those recognizable patterns within a constellation. In this case, the pattern is the whole constellation pretty much. At least that's how Deborah Bird sees it. Except for one thing. Deneb is at the top of the cross, but at the tail of the swan. In fact, the very name Deneb means tail. There's that little star Alberio also at the head of the swan, but at the base of the cross. Phew, as Deborah Bird writes. Well, of course, this is where we tell you we're never going to spring any kind of pop quizzes here at Inception Radio Network UFO Headline News. No grades given, just the accumulation, hopefully, of some kind of cool stuff. Stuff like this, for instance, from the website cnet.com with a byline for Eric Mack. Headline: Scientists investigating strange signals from nearby star. Subheadline: Unexplained radio transmissions from 11 light years away are getting a closer listen from humanity's biggest ear. Yesterday, Sunday, the world's largest currently operating radio telescope was observing the nearby star Ross 128. That star may be the origin of some very odd and inexplicable radio signals picked up last May. The Arecibo Observatory in Puerto Rico will again target the red dwarf star, which is the 12th closest to our sun and 11 light years away. They're going to gather more data that could eventually help solve this mystery. Abel Mendez, a professor at the University of Puerto Rico at Arecibo's Planetary Habitability Laboratory, described the signals as, quote, broadband, quasi-periodic, non-polarized pulses with very strong dispersion-like features, end quotes. Mendez said that in a blog post this week, and he suggests they could be caused by solar flares from Ross 128, or by something else in the field of view, or perhaps even a high-orbit satellite. Oh, Abel Mendez, that professor from the University of Puerto Rico, makes one other comment here. He says, quote, in case you're wondering, the recurrent aliens hypothesis is at the bottom of many other better explanations, end quotes. But there are problems with each of the three leading explanations, he says. Solar flares aren't a great match for the frequencies and dispersions observed in these signals. There are few nearby objects in the field of view, and satellites aren't known to emit such pulses. So Arecibo will be listening hard for these strange signals, and will also turn its massive ear to another nearby red dwarf called Barnard's star. And meanwhile, back at the University of Puerto Rico, Professor Abel Mendez jokes that he has a, quote, Pina colada ready to celebrate if the signals result to be astronomical in nature, end quotes. Meanwhile, the alien hunters, sci-fi fans, and gamers can continue to revel in speculation that the alien hypothesis cannot be 100% ruled out. After all, Ross 128 is known as Phi Virginis, the setting of numerous works of science fiction and even one old-school computer game that some kids of the 1990s might remember. Here's an update on that mysterious rogue planet floating through space. It may be even stranger than we thought. In fact, that is the headline here. It gets a byline for writer Rob Waugh, who hangs out on the other side of the pond. He's in the United Kingdom. Here's the story. A rogue planet spotted wandering through space on its own, maybe even stranger than scientists expected, as it is not one, but two objects. This is an update. We touched on this briefly last week on UFO Headline News. Here's more info. Scientists now believe that the object might actually be two tiny brown dwarfs orbiting one another, and that would make them the smallest binary system ever found. Brown dwarfs, those objects too big to be a planet, but they're not massive enough to sustain the nuclear fusion which makes stars burn. After observing these two objects, and this week they have names. Well, the name is 2MASS J11193254-1137466. But not to worry, if you want to know, there will be a link later at ufoheadlinenews.com, and no tests. This has been studied out of the Keck 2 telescope in Hawaii, and scientists believe now that they are two brown dwarf stars. It's thought to be the lowest mass binary system ever detected. Writing in the blog of the American Astronomical Society, the scientists say, quote, "The team found that each component is a mere minus 3.7 Jupiter masses, and that places them in this fuzzy region between planets and stars. Regardless of its definition, 2MASS J11193254-1137466 qualifies as the lowest mass binary discovered to date. The individual masses of the components also place them among the lowest mass free-floating brown dwarfs known. This system will therefore be a crucial benchmark for tests of evolutionary and atmospheric models for low-mass stars in the future," end quotes. And we will keep our eyes on that. This broadcaster is rather puzzled regarding that use of the word dwarfs, D-W-A-R-F-S, rather than dwarves with a D-W-A-R-V-E-S. We'll have to sleuth around and see if we can find out what is up with that. And then there's this from airspacemag.com. Headline, "The Search for Extraterrestrial Artifacts." SETI research is picking up on the other side of the Atlantic. This article gets a byline for writer Dirk Schultzmakutsch. The first workshop of the new German SETI initiative recently convened in the southern town of Freiburg, with experts in fields ranging from social science to satellite imaging on hand to discuss how to advance the search for extraterrestrial intelligent life. Michael Schetzky from the University of Freiburg started things off with a talk on the possible consequences of first contact with an extraterrestrial species and how we might prepare for such an encounter. The symposium, held at the Library of Congress in Washington, D.C. 3 years ago, had a similar theme, but Professor Schetzky's talk focused more on contact with artificial intelligence or machine-based life. Other talks had to do with SETA, S-E-T-A. That's new to this broadcaster. It is the search for extraterrestrial artifacts. The name is new, the concept certainly not, which will be one of the subjects of future research by this German research network. Hakan Kayal from the University of Würzburg outlined the technical state-of-the-art in detecting and identifying objects in space, whether natural phenomena such as meteorites and sprites or presumed extraterrestrial probes. It was sobering that even in Earth's vicinity, we could only detect very large kilometer-sized probes, or those that had a huge energy output. Other experts in the research network are addressing questions of possible cultural exchange, communications between a putative extraterrestrial civilization and humans. Advanced alien civilizations might use probes to engage in interstellar communications, or to observe other planets, such as Earth. This intriguing idea led Robert Freitas and Francisco Valdez in the 1970s to conduct a photographic search of the Earth-Moon Lagrange points, those points where a probe could be parked without any expenditure of energy. They didn't find anything down to a detection limit of about 14th magnitude. But that was 40 years ago, and with today's technology, a more thorough search could be conducted of these Lagrange points and other localities. Funding for this type of research is hard to come by, however, and it's more likely to come from private sponsors rather than traditional government sources, a possibility the German research network is looking into. After many years where SETI was pursued almost solely in the United States, primarily by the SETI Institute, Germany is finally stepping up to join in this search, as are other countries in Europe, including France. That means we can look forward to significant contributions from scientists on both sides of the Atlantic in the near future. Oh, by the way, about this writer, Dirk Schulze-McCooch is a professor at the Technical University Berlin, Germany. He's an adjunct professor at Arizona State University and Washington State University. He's an affiliate of the SETI Institute in Mountain View, California. He's got several books, in fact 7, related to astrobiology and planetary habitability. Dirk Schulze-McCooch, a busy man. Here's an update on busyness in the sky. Those eerie black rings, they appeared in Mexico City, and we covered that here last week at UFO Headline News. And now they're appearing elsewhere. So here's the headline. Mystery as eerie black rings appear in the sky around the world, sending UFO hunters into a frenzy. Well, we think that might perhaps be somewhat of an exaggeration. This is written by Patrick Knox. Mysterious black smoke rings have been forming in the sky across the world, with scientists struggling to explain this freaky phenomenon. Mystery surrounds this epidemic of sinister black smoke rings. They've been forming now for a week or so. This freaky phenomenon has been dubbed as, quote, smoke vortexes, end quotes. Gentle listeners, if you haven't seen the shots of this phenomenon, they're still available over at ufoheadlinenews.com, and of course you can link to them with this story as well. We think that's a pretty good description, smoke vortexes. They've been appearing in remote spots in Russia's Siberia and the American Midwest, with the latest one being spotted in the United Kingdom. According to some witnesses, this particular site is straight out of the 2016 film Arrival, where visiting aliens use the circles to communicate. Kimberly Robinson, 22, was driving down the M62 near Birkenshaw in the United Kingdom with her boyfriend Danny Cooper, 26, when they noticed this creepy black mark in the sky. Full-time mum Miss Robinson described the circle as, quote, the weirdest thing I have ever seen, end quotes. She said, me and my boyfriend were driving today and noticed a black flying ring in the sky. It looked a bit smoky, but the shape was a solid ring. We haven't ever seen anything like this before, and we've looked into it, and no one knows what it is, end quotes. West Yorkshire Fire Service said there had been no reports of fire at the time of this sighting on Sunday. It was just after 1:30 p.m. Another bizarre ring was spotted in Missouri in the United States the day before. But police believe it must have been caused by some sort of firework in that case. Others believe the strange rings are evidence of alien ships visiting our planet. In April, another sighting spooked out shoppers in a mall in Siberia. Yes, they have those. With some fearful it was a kind of doomsday warning. In fact, one social media person said, quote, it's a kind of supernatural power flying across the city, end quotes. But UFO investigator Nick Pope has another, more prosaic explanation. He said, quote, despite exotic theories about UFOs, aliens, or portals to other dimensions, I believe there's a decidedly down-to-earth explanation here. A so-called smoke vortex can arise when you have a blast through a circular structure like a smokestack. So these weird effects can be caused by accident, or indeed by design. And on this latter point, they can be...
Your heart has a natural rhythm, a beat that drives you forward. So the minute something's out of sync, turn to Hackensack Meridian Health, one of the nation's leading cardiovascular programs. This is where you'll find the power of possible. Leading specialists bringing you breakthroughs sooner. Advanced rehab that gets you moving faster. And everything's perfectly orchestrated, so your world never misses a beat. Hackensack Meridian Health. Life years ahead.
Created as a sort of pyrotechnic effect. It would be interesting to know if there were any outdoor festivals being held in the area concerned, end quotes. Very logical, Mr. Nick Pope. He is that guy. The smoke ring filmed in Mexico was said to have resembled the bottom of a whirlwind, as it perhaps rose up in the ground and over the heads of the witnesses. Very curious, almost to this broadcaster resembling that infamous hole punch cloud incident. Gate 17, Chicago's O'Hare Airport. Yep, it was a cloud. Move along, folks. Nothing to see here. But there seemingly was something to see at Dingman's Ferry, Pennsylvania, July 16th, 2017. We grabbed this from UFOstalker.com. MUFON gave this case a tracking number for purposes of identification. That number is 85141. The date of this sighting is the 16th of July. As we said, it wasn't reported till the next day. Here's what the witness says in summary. I looked at the sky and saw a bigger version of a lightning bug falling, eventually landing in the woods next to my house. It looked like a star fallen. Sighting specifics, a very close viewing distance, 21 to 100 feet initially, only moving to 101 to 500 feet. The altitude landed. The sighting duration 15 minutes. Object features unknown. Object flight path with directional change. And our witness reports this object to have been shaped star-like. Here's the account. Today, July 16th, 2017, at 11:49 p.m.-ish, I was getting ready to head to bed, so I started to close my blinds. I looked up at the sky and saw a glowing green light. At first I thought it was a plane, but then it looked like just a huge version of a green lightning bug. It began to descend to the ground, and I realized then it wasn't a plane. When it landed, it stayed in one area for about 15 minutes. It looked like an extremely green light was sitting in the woods next to my house. I actually felt terrified. I felt as if something really bad could happen right now. I felt that if they saw me looking at them, so I closed my blinds and I closed the curtains. After the sighting, I felt like I ought to do some research. So I looked up what to do if you sight a UFO, and that's how I'm filling out this report right now. Excellent idea. Good choice. Fear. Interesting. Fear of the unknown, we're going to guess. So turn that fear into perhaps activity. Sleuth around on the internet. Utilize it to find similar sightings and like-minded individuals. That's a cool thing. Here's something from Laguna Woods, California. A UFO sighting, in fact. Case number 85140. The date here is the 10th of June. It wasn't reported till July 16th. So here we go. The summary: vertical metal object floating across the sky. This is very difficult to describe. You just have to head on over to UFOheadlinenews.com, gentle listeners. Check out those photos for yourself. We would not even begin to describe them. At any rate, the sighting specifics: viewing distance over 1 mile, altitude over 500 feet, no cloud cover. The sighting duration was 20 minutes. But those object features are simply described as other. The flight path was a straight line path, and this object had an unknown shape. There is some meteorology here for Laguna Woods, California. Maximum temperature, 71 degrees Fahrenheit, 22 degrees Celsius, down to a desert coastal low of 62 degrees Fahrenheit, 17 degrees Celsius. The maximum visibility here was 10 miles, 16 kilometers. down to a minimum of 3 miles and 5 kilometers because, lo and behold, it was Southern California, but it was raining. Interestingly, there seems to be a discrepancy here between the summary and the sighting details because this says, weather-wise, on Friday, June 10th, 2017 at 5:15 p.m., it was a cool evening, not a cloud in the blue sky. I was sitting on my balcony in Laguna Woods talking to a friend facing east while gazing at Saddleback Mountain. I noticed a shimmering metal object in the sky, and I thought it was a plane at first. As I kept my eyes on it, I realized this was too vertical looking to be a plane, so I grabbed my binoculars to see what this was. While looking through the binoculars, I saw a pulsating red light coming from within the center column of this object. I couldn't see that red light without the binoculars, so I decided to grab my DSLR camera, 16 to 270 millimeter lens, to take a few shots of this and look at it better through my viewfinder. The object moved out of view before I could grab my tripod to get better shots. These consecutive shots show that the object was changing in appearance, and I believe it was simultaneously rotating in circles while moving east-west in a straight line across the sky towards the ocean. Yikes. Meteorological confusion or not, still a very cool sighting. Check out those photos. We've just checked out the fact that we've got to fly out of here like a UFO because that's a wrap. Thank you for listening to Inception Radio Network. Follow today's broadcast at ufoheadlinenews.com. Take care of each other. We're all in this together. This is Carol Carl. See you tomorrow.